My name is Doug, 68 years old, and a retired construction foreman. 5 years ago, I lost Martha, my wife, of 40 years, leaving a hole in my heart nothing could fill. I thought moving in with my son Nathan and his wife Brenda would bring comfort in my golden years, especially in the house I helped them buy. For a while things seemed okay, but tension had been building over the past year. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine my own flesh and blood would look me in the eye and demand my pension or threaten to put me on the street. If you've ever supported family who didn't appreciate it, hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from. I spent over 40 years in construction, working my way up from carrying lumber to becoming a foreman at Harrison Building Company. Nothing fancy or glamorous, just honest work that left my hands calloused and my back aching. But it put food on the table and paid the bills. Martha and I were never rich by any stretch, but we managed a stable middle-class life in our modest 3-bedroom home in Springfield. Martha was a kindergarten teacher, the kindest soul you'd ever meet. We met at a county fair back in '76, and I knew the moment I saw her laughing on the Ferris wheel that she was the one. We married young, both of us just 22, and built our life brick by brick just like the houses I worked on. Nathan came along 3 years later. Our only child, we poured everything into him. Even when money was tight, we made sure he never went without. Christmas always had presents under the tree. Birthdays always had cake and celebrations. And when he wanted to play Little League, I worked overtime shifts to pay for the uniform and equipment. Martha and I believed in hard work, but we also believed in giving our son opportunities we never had. Growing up, Nathan was a good kid, smart as a whip, with his mother's easy smile and knack for making friends. He did well in school, went to community college, and eventually landed a decent job in sales at a software company. Martha and I couldn't have been prouder when he married Brenda 12 years ago. She seemed sharp, ambitious, came from a good family. They made a handsome couple. When they were looking to buy their first home, the housing market was brutal. Interest rates were climbing, and they kept getting outbid. I remember the night Nathan called discouraged after losing out on the third house they'd tried for. "I don't know if we're ever going to have our own place, Dad," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Martha and I had been saving for years, putting aside money for our retirement. We weren't wealthy, but we had built up a decent nest egg along with my pension from the construction company. After talking it over, Martha and I decided to help them with the down payment on a 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs. $80,000, nearly a third of our savings. But the joy on Nathan's face made it worth every penny. "This is just a loan," Nathan insisted at the time. "We'll pay you back, I promise." I waved it off. "Consider it an early inheritance," I told him. "Your mother and I want to see you enjoy it while we're still around." That said, I did agree to be a co-signer on the mortgage, since it helped them secure a better interest rate. When Martha got sick 3 years later, the cancer moved fast. Within 8 months, she was gone. I still remember holding her hand in the hospital, her once vibrant eyes clouded with morphine, but still finding the strength to make me promise I'd stay close to Nathan. "Family is everything, Doug," she whispered. "Promise me you won't be alone." After the funeral, I kept to my small apartment about 20 minutes from Nathan's house. I had my routine, my pension that covered my modest expenses and the remaining savings we'd held back. I visited Nathan, Brenda, and my grandkids Tyler and Emma every Sunday for dinner. For a while, it worked well enough though. The apartment felt empty without Martha. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs. They started small, almost imperceptible at first. Nathan began calling less frequently. Our Sunday dinners occasionally got canceled last minute. When I did visit, Brenda seemed increasingly irritated by my presence, making little comments about my habit of bringing dessert. "We're watching our sugar, Doug," or how I played with the grandkids. "They have homework, Doug." One Sunday, Nathan asked if he could borrow $1,000 to cover an unexpected car repair. I handed over the money without hesitation. Family helps family, that was always my belief. But that $1,000 was never repaid, and soon became $2,000 for a plumbing emergency, then $3,000 when their refrigerator supposedly died. I never pressed about repayment. Each time Nathan would say, "I'll get it back to you soon, Dad." And each time I'd reply, "No rush, son." But deep down a small voice wondered if I'd ever see that money again. The real turning point came when my landlord raised my rent by $300 a month. On my fixed income, that increase would eat significantly into my monthly budget. When I mentioned this to Nathan during one of our now less frequent Sunday dinners, he and Brenda exchanged a look. "Why don't you move in with us?" Dad Nathan suggested. "We have that spare bedroom in the basement we've been fixing up. You helped us buy this house after all. It's too big for just us anyway." I hesitated, remembering my promise to Martha about not being alone. Still, something in Brenda's tight smile made me uncertain. "Are you sure I don't want to impose?" I said. "Nonsense," Nathan replied, though Brenda remained silent. "It's the perfect solution. You'll save on rent, and you can help out with the grandkids when we need it. Plus, think of all the money you'll save." I should have seen then how his mind immediately went to my finances, not to my company or comfort. But grief and loneliness can cloud judgment, and I agreed, hoping this arrangement would bring me closer to my family, just as Martha had wanted. Moving into Nathan and Brenda's basement bedroom felt like stepping backward and forward in time simultaneously. Backward because, at 68, I never imagined I'd be living in someone else's home again. Forward because I genuinely believed this would strengthen my relationship with my son and grandchildren in my remaining years. The room itself wasn't bad. Freshly painted a light blue with a decent queen bed, a small dresser, and a television mounted on the wall. Nathan had installed a small bathroom down there the previous year, so I had some privacy. Still, it wasn't my own place, with my own things arranged the way Martha and I had them. I brought only what would fit in the space, storing the rest of my possessions in their shed and garage. The first few weeks went smoothly enough. I established a routine, waking early, as I always had from my construction days, making coffee for everyone before they got up. The grandkids, 10-year-old Tyler and 8-year-old Emma, seemed genuinely happy to have me around. I helped them with their math homework, built a treehouse in the backyard, with lumber left over from my working days, and drove them to sports practices when Nathan and Brenda were busy. Around the house, I made myself useful, fixing leaky faucets, repainting the peeling trim, and keeping the lawn meticulously maintained. One Saturday, I cleaned out the gutters without being asked, remembering how Nathan had mentioned hiring someone to do it. "No need to waste money on that," I told him. "I've been climbing ladders since before you were born." He seemed appreciative, clapping me on the shoulder. "Thanks, Dad. That saves us a couple $100." That became a pattern I didn't recognize at first. My value in the house was increasingly measured by how much money I could save them or contribute. When the dishwasher broke, I fixed it instead of them calling a repairman. When the fence needed replacing, I did the labor myself with Nathan, only helping for an hour before claiming a work emergency. Meals became the first visible sign of my shifting status in the household. Initially, we ate dinner together most nights, sharing stories about our days. Gradually, family dinners became less frequent. I'd come upstairs to find they'd already eaten with Brenda, offering a curt, "We didn't know when you'd be up," or "We were starving, so we went ahead." Often I'd make my own dinner, eating alone at the kitchen island, while hearing their laughter from the living room. When I did join them, conversations would sometimes halt abruptly upon my entrance or shift to topics that deliberately excluded me. 3 months into this arrangement, Nathan approached me on a Sunday morning while Brenda was at her yoga class. "Hey, Dad, hate to bring this up, but our property taxes went up this year. Since you're living here now, would you mind contributing a bit more to the household expenses, maybe $500 a month?" I was already buying most of the groceries and paying $200 monthly for utilities, but I agreed without complaint. My pension wasn't large, but I could manage it, especially with no rent to pay. A month later, the car insurance went up, another $200 from me. Then it was school supplies for the kids, expensive extracurricular activities, and a family vacation to Disney World that I wasn't invited on but somehow expected to help fund. Each request came with a similar refrain: "We're family. We help each other out, or it's your house too, Dad. Except it wasn't my house, not really. That became abundantly clear one evening when I moved a lamp in the living room to better light my crossword puzzle. Could you put that back? Brenda snapped more harshly than the situation warranted. I had it that way for a reason. Small incidents like this multiplied. My suggestions for dinner were ignored. The grandkids were increasingly too busy to spend time with me. Nathan started locking his home office where I'd occasionally use the computer to check my email. 6 months into my stay, I made a disturbing discovery. While looking for an important document related to my pension, I came across the mortgage paperwork for the house. Looking at it more carefully than I had in years, I realized my name was still on the mortgage as a co-signer. I'd completely forgotten that detail in the years since helping them buy the place. This meant I was legally responsible for the payments, if they defaulted, despite having no ownership stake in the property. That same week, I noticed my gold watch was missing. It wasn't particularly valuable in monetary terms, but Martha had given it to me on our 25th anniversary, and I treasured it. When I mentioned this to Nathan, he shrugged. "You probably misplaced it, Dad. You've been a bit forgetful lately." I hadn't been forgetful not about important things like that. I began taking inventory of my possessions and realized other items had disappeared too. My collection of silver dollars, a small bronze sculpture, Martha and I had bought on our anniversary trip to Arizona, and oddly, the tools from my old work belt. The tension with Brenda escalated after I accidentally walked in on her discussing me with her sister on the phone. "It's like having another child in the house," she was saying, unaware I'd come up the basement stairs. "He's everywhere, judging how I parent, how I keep house. Nathan says we need his money, but I'm at my breaking point." When she saw me, she abruptly ended the call. We stood in uncomfortable silence before I retreated back downstairs, my heart heavy. That night I heard them arguing, their voices carrying through the vents. "I can't do this anymore," Brenda was saying. "It's him or me, Nathan. Make a choice." "What do you expect me to do?" Nathan replied. "Throw my father out on the street." "Why not? He's got money. Make him give you power of attorney over his accounts. He's getting old anyway, he shouldn't be managing his own finances." The conversation shifted then to specifics about my pension, how much I received monthly, and speculation about how much I still had in savings. The casual way they discussed taking control of my finances sent a chill through me. I lay awake most of that night wondering how things had deteriorated so badly and what I should do about it. The first major confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening in April. I'd been watching Tyler's baseball game, cheering from the bleachers, when I noticed Nathan wasn't there. As Tyler's father, he rarely missed a game. When I asked Tyler about it after his team won, he shrugged with the indifference only a preteen can muster. Dad said he had to work late again. I drove Tyler home, stopping for ice cream to celebrate his winning hit. When we arrived, Brenda was clearly annoyed about the treat. "We eat dinner as a family, Doug. You can't just decide to give the kids sugar whenever you want." The irony of her family dinner comment wasn't lost on me given how often I'd been excluded lately, but I apologized and went downstairs to give them space. Around 9 that evening, I heard Nathan's car pull into the driveway. From my basement window, I could see him sitting there for several minutes before coming inside. When he finally entered, I could hear the unmistakable slur in his voice as he argued with Brenda. This wasn't the first time he'd come home like this recently. Twice in the past month, he'd arrived well after midnight, stumbling and smelling of whiskey. Each time, Brenda would hiss at him to be quiet, and he'd snap back about needing to unwind from the stress. The next morning, I found Nathan alone in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee and looking haggard. "Everything okay, son?" I asked, pouring myself a cup. "Missed you at Tyler's game yesterday." "Work's been hell," he muttered. "The new regional manager's breathing down everyone's neck about numbers." I nodded, sitting across from him. "You know, if you're having trouble, you can talk to me about it." His laugh was bitter. "What would you know about it, Dad? The business world today isn't like your time. Everything's cutthroat now." "Maybe not," I conceded. "But stress is stress, and drinking isn't going to solve anything." His face hardened. Are you seriously lecturing me in my own house? I'm concerned, Nathan. This isn't like you. He stood abruptly, coffee sloshing over the rim of his mug. You know what, I don't need this right now. I've got enough pressure without you playing psychologist. As he stormed out, I noticed a piece of paper that had fallen from his pocket. It was a final notice from a credit card company showing a balance of over $20,000. I quickly folded it and placed it on the counter where he'd see it, but the glimpse into his finances troubled me deeply. Later that week, I was helping Emma with a school project when Brenda came home with shopping bags from expensive department stores. For someone concerned about household expenses, her regular shopping sprees seemed contradictory. That evening, another argument erupted between them about money, with Nathan accusing Brenda of overspending and her firing back about his business dinners that kept him out late. The following day, I discovered that my lockbox, where I kept important documents and a small emergency cash fund of $500, had been pried open. The cash was gone. When I confronted Nathan about it, his response chilled me. "Maybe you should keep better track of your things, Dad," he said dismissively. "Or maybe you already spent it and forgot. You're not exactly young anymore." The gaslighting was becoming a pattern, making me question my own memory and perception. But I knew I hadn't touched that money or given anyone permission to take it. A week later, I overheard Nathan on the phone with someone discussing options for accessing retirement funds from a parent. The conversation was clearly about my finances, with Nathan asking about legal requirements for power of attorney and whether pension payments could be redirected. That night at dinner, one of our increasingly rare family meals, Nathan brought up the topic of my pension directly. "Dad, I've been thinking. Managing finances gets more complicated as you get older. Why don't you let me help you with your accounts? I could make sure your bills are paid on time, manage your investments." "My finances are just fine, Nathan," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my growing alarm. "My bills are always paid on time and my banking is simple enough." "But wouldn't it be easier to have everything consolidated? Your pension could come directly into our household account, and then you wouldn't have to worry about contributing separately to expenses." The trap was being laid so carefully, so incrementally, that someone more vulnerable might not have seen it. I thought of elderly friends who had lost control of their finances to well-meaning family members, only to find themselves completely dependent and sometimes neglected. "I appreciate the offer," I said firmly, "but I prefer keeping my finances separate." Brenda exchanged a look with Nathan that spoke volumes. The tension in the room was palpable. After dinner, I heard them arguing again, this time about me being stubborn and ungrateful after all they'd done by taking me in. In May, things escalated further when several pieces of furniture from the garage disappeared, including an antique roll-top desk that had belonged to Martha's father. When I asked about it, Nathan claimed they'd donated it to charity. "It was just collecting dust, Dad. Besides, we needed the space." The casual disposal of my belongings without consultation was painful, but the breaking point came when I discovered Tyler wearing Martha's father's watch, a family heirloom I'd been saving for his 18th birthday. "Where did you get that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Dad gave it to me," Tyler replied proudly. "He said it was time I had a real man's watch." I confronted Nathan that evening, my patience finally exhausted. That watch was meant to be a special gift when Tyler turned 18. "It's one of the few things I have left from Martha's family." "It's just sitting in a drawer," he countered. "What's the point of having things if no one uses them? Tyler loves it." "That wasn't your decision to make," I insisted. "Those are my belongings, my memories." His expression darkened. "Look, Dad, you live in our house now. We're doing you a favor here. If you're not happy with the arrangement, maybe you should look into assisted living facilities." The threat hung in the air between us. I was being told not so subtly that my continued residence depended on my compliance and access to my resources. That night, I began researching affordable apartments in the area, but the rental prices had increased significantly since I'd last looked. On my fixed income, the options were severely limited. I was trapped, at least temporarily, in a home that no longer felt safe or welcoming, with family members who increasingly viewed me as a financial resource rather than a loved one. The realization was devastating, but it forced me to begin making contingency plans. If things continued to deteriorate, I would need an escape route. June 15th. A date etched into my memory, like the day Martha died or the day Nathan was born. It was a Friday, unusually hot for early summer, the kind of sticky evening that makes tempers flare. I'd spent the day helping a former coworker, Jim, with a bathroom renovation at his daughter's house, grateful for the excuse to be away from Nathan's increasingly hostile home environment. When I returned around 6:30, the house was quiet. Too quiet given that it was dinner time with two active children. A note on the refrigerator explained why I took kids to Brenda's parents for the weekend. Back Sunday. No invitation for me, not even a heads up. Just another reminder of my peripheral status in their lives. I made myself a simple sandwich and settled in the basement to watch a baseball game. Around 9, I heard the front door slam, followed by unsteady footsteps. Nathan was home, and from the sound of it, he'd been drinking heavily. I considered staying downstairs to avoid a confrontation, but decided that hiding in my own living space wasn't the answer. Upstairs, I found Nathan rummaging through the liquor cabinet, an empty tumbler in his hand. His tie was loosened shirt untucked, and his eyes had that glassy, unfocused look of someone several drinks past their limit. "Everything okay?" I asked cautiously. He turned, swaying slightly. "Well, if it isn't my father, the great provider." His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Want a drink? Oh wait, this is my whiskey bought with my money." "You've had enough, son," I said gently. "Let me get you some water instead." "Don't tell me what to do in my house," he snapped, sloshing whiskey into his glass. "You think because you helped with the down payment years ago, you have some claim here. News flash, Dad, that was a gift, not an investment." I took a deep breath. "I never said it was an investment, Nathan. I helped because that's what family does." He gave a bitter laugh. "Family. Right. Is that why you're hoarding your pension while we struggle to pay bills? Some family man you are." The unfairness of his accusation stung. I was already contributing significantly to household expenses, far more than the cost of the small space I occupied. "I'm hardly hoarding anything," I replied evenly. "I've been helping with groceries, utilities, and giving you extra every month." "Pennies," he scoffed, taking another large gulp of whiskey. "You're sitting on a pension and savings while we're drowning in debt." That caught me off guard. "What debt, Nathan? You've got good jobs this house. Where is all your money going?" He slammed the glass down. "Not that it's any of your business, but we've got credit card debt, okay? The market tanked last year and I made some investments that didn't work out. Brenda has expensive taste. The kids need things for school activities. It adds up." "Gambling," I said quietly, the pieces finally coming together. The late nights, the mysterious cash shortages, the increasing desperation. "You've been gambling, haven't you?" His face contorted with rage and shame. "So what if I have? I'm trying to dig us out of a hole. One good win and everything would be fixed." "That's not how it works, son. Gambling only makes the hole deeper." "Save your lectures," he shouted. "You know what would actually help. If you contributed like a real member of this household, your pension check your savings. You're not using it for anything important." I stood my ground. "My pension is what I live on, Nathan. It's not a slush fund for you to gamble away." He stepped closer, his breath reeking of alcohol. "You know what the lawyer told me? As your next of kin, I could petition for guardianship. Claim you're not competent to manage your own affairs. One doctor's note about your age and forgetfulness, and I could take control of everything." The naked threat sent ice through my veins. "Is that really who you've become? Someone who would rob his own father?" "It's not robbery if it's family," he slurred. "We took you in, didn't we? You owe us." "I owe you respect and love as my son," I said firmly, "not servitude or my life savings." His face darkened. "Then here's how it's going to be. Either sign over your monthly pension checks to help with the mortgage and bills, or find somewhere else to live. I'm done carrying your weight." My weight. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I've been paying my way and then some. "Not enough," he shouted, slamming his hand on the counter. "It's all or nothing, Dad. Your pension or you're out. I need an answer now." In that moment, looking at the stranger my son had become, something broke inside me. But something else hardened too, a resolve I hadn't needed since my early days supporting a young family on a construction worker's wages. "I don't need until morning," I said quietly. "I'm leaving tonight." Surprise flashed across his face, quickly replaced by skepticism. "Right. Where would you go? You've got nowhere else." "Anywhere would be better than staying where I'm not wanted except for my money." He sneered. "Go ahead then. See how far you get on your own at your age." Without another word, I turned and walked downstairs to my basement room. With methodical calm that belied the storm in my heart, I pulled out my old suitcase, the same one Martha and I had used on our honeymoon, and began packing essentials. Clothes, toiletries, medications, and the few precious mementos I still had within reach. My wedding photo, Martha's reading glasses, the pocket watch my father had given me. As I packed, I could hear Nathan moving around upstairs, the clink of the bottle against glass as he poured another drink. Part of me still couldn't believe it had come to this, me at 68 being essentially evicted by my own son. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I looked around the small room that had been my home for the past 8 months. Despite everything I'd tried to make it comfortable to believe I was part of a family here, that illusion was now shattered beyond repair. When I finished packing, I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my wallet. Inside was a business card for Thomas Walker, my old friend from the construction days, who'd recently reached out after hearing through mutual friends that I was living with Nathan. "Call any time," he'd written on the back. "I've got a spare room if you ever need it." At the time, I'd thanked him but tucked the card away, unable to imagine needing such an escape hatch from my own family. I dialed his number, half expecting voicemail at this hour. He answered on the third ring. "Tom." I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I hate to ask, but does that spare room offer still stand?" Without hesitation, he replied, "Of course, Doug. Are you okay? Do you need me to pick you up? If it's not too much trouble, I'll explain when I see you. Text me the address. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I gathered my suitcase and a small bag of remaining possessions, then walked upstairs for the last time. Nathan had passed out on the couch, an empty glass tilted in his limp hand. Looking at him, I felt a complex mixture of love, disappointment, and grief. Somewhere inside this man was still my little boy, the one who'd once looked at me with admiration and trust. But I couldn't reach that person anymore, not through the barriers of addiction, greed, and resentment he'd built. I placed my house key on the kitchen counter, alongside a brief note. "Nathan, I love you, but I won't be used or threatened. Call me when you're ready to talk respectfully. Dad." Then I stepped out into the warm June night, waiting on the curb with my suitcase, until Tom's familiar pickup truck rounded the corner. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the house I'd helped my son buy, the house that had never truly become my home. Thomas lived in a modest ranch-style home about 40 minutes from Nathan's neighborhood. A widower himself, he'd converted his grown daughter's old room into a comfortable guest space. It wasn't fancy, just a twin-bed dresser and small desk, but it felt more welcoming than the basement I'd just left. "Stay as long as you need," Thomas said, helping me with my bags. "Sarah only visits at Christmas nowadays, so the room just sits empty." That first night's sleep eluded me. I lay awake replaying the confrontation with Nathan, wondering where I'd gone wrong as a father. How the son Martha and I had raised with such care could turn on me so completely. By dawn, my eyes were dry, but burning my heart heavier than the concrete blocks I used to haul in my working days. Thomas didn't press for details over breakfast, just poured coffee and offered simple companionship. Eventually, though, I found myself telling him everything, the words pouring out like water through a broken dam. "You didn't do anything wrong, Doug," he said when I'd finished. "Kids make their own choices. Nathan's a grown man responsible for his own actions." "But where did this come from?" I asked. "We didn't raise him to be like this." Thomas shook his head. "Gambling changes people. So does debt. It makes them desperate, willing to cross lines they never thought they would. Later that morning, I called my bank and discovered something disturbing. There had been 3 attempts to access my accounts online with incorrect passwords. Someone had also called pretending to be me, trying to change the mailing address for my statements, but had failed the security questions. Given the timing, it could only have been Nathan. The violation spurred me to action. First, I visited the bank in person to change all my passwords and add extra security measures to my accounts. The personal banker, a kind woman named Janice, listened to my situation with growing concern. "Unfortunately, what you're describing is a form of elder abuse, Mr. Reynolds," she said gently. "It's more common than people realize. I'd strongly recommend speaking with our financial advisor about protecting your assets." The financial advisor, Michael Brennan, didn't mince words. "The fact that you're still on the mortgage as a co-signer puts you in a vulnerable position. If they default, it affects your credit, and you could be held responsible for the payments." "What are my options?" I asked. "Well, you can't simply remove yourself from the mortgage. That would require refinancing on their part. But you can protect yourself by talking to an elder law attorney about your rights." He recommended Patricia Gomez, an attorney specializing in elder law, whom I met with the following day. Her office was small but professional, lined with legal books and framed credentials. "Based on what you've told me, Mr. Reynolds, your son was escalating toward financial exploitation," she explained after hearing my story. "The threats, the missing items, the attempts to access your accounts, these are serious red flags." "What should I do about the mortgage?" I asked. She leaned forward. "As a co-signer, you're legally entitled to know the status of the mortgage and receive notifications about missed payments. I'd suggest contacting the mortgage company immediately to make sure you're listed as a contact person. This gives you visibility if your son stops making payments." "And what if he does stop paying?" "That's where things get complicated. You could be held responsible." However, she continued, seeing my expression. "There's a protective measure we can take. Since you're a co-signer, but not a co-owner, receiving benefit from the property, and since you've been forced out of the residence under duress, we can file for what's called an innocent spouse protection, in case of default." Following her advice, I contacted the mortgage company, Heartland Home Loans. What I discovered was shocking. Nathan had already missed 2 mortgage payments, and the account was in pre-foreclosure status. They had sent notices, but since they were going to the house, I hadn't seen them. "I'm a co-signer on this loan," I explained to the representative. "I wasn't aware of the missed payments." "Well, sir, according to our records, there was actually a payment made 2 days ago that brought the account current," she replied. This confused me until I realized the timing. Was this payment made from my bank account by any chance? After verification of my identity, she confirmed my suspicion. "Yes, the payment was made from your checking account, ending in 4,721. My stomach dropped. Nathan had accessed my account and made the mortgage payment without my knowledge or consent. The amount, nearly $2,000, represented a significant portion of my monthly pension deposit. I immediately filed a fraud claim with my bank and the mortgage company, explaining the situation. The bank promised to investigate and potentially reverse the transaction, though they warned it might take several days. That evening, my phone rang with Nathan's number. I hesitated before answering, steeling myself. "Dad," he began, his voice a mixture of anger and panic. "What the hell? The mortgage company called saying you're disputing the payment. They're threatening to put us back in pre-foreclosure." "You took money from my account without permission, Nathan," I replied calmly. "That's theft." "It's not theft," he shouted. "You're on the mortgage. You're responsible for the payments, too." "I didn't agree to make that payment. You had no right to access my accounts." "So what, you're just going to let them foreclose on your grandchildren's home? Is that the kind of grandfather you are?" The emotional manipulation was so transparent now that I'd gained some distance. "I'm the kind of grandfather who expects his son to honor basic boundaries and laws. How did you even access my account, Nathan?" He was silent for a moment. "I may have seen your banking information when you were staying with us. That's not the point. The point is, You can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you. These are consequences of your own actions, I said. First the gambling, then the threats, now stealing from me. Where does it end? It was one time we were desperate. The bank was going to take the house. And whose fault is that? Where has all your money been going, Nathan? Because it certainly hasn't been to your mortgage. Another pause. Look, can we just talk about this? Come back to the house, we'll figure something out. I'm not coming back, I said firmly. Not after how you treated me. If you want to talk, it'll be in a public place, and only after you've gotten help for your gambling. This is ridiculous. You can't just cancel the mortgage payment. What about the kids? Don't you care what happens to them? His attempt to use my grandchildren as leverage only strengthened my resolve. I love Tyler and Emma very much, which is why I won't enable your destructive behavior anymore. Get help, Nathan. Then we can talk about rebuilding trust. I ended the call as he was still protesting his words, becoming increasingly desperate and angry. Minutes later, texts began flooding and alternating between guilt trips, apologies, and veiled threats. I turned off my phone for the night, emotionally exhausted but certain I'd made the right decision. The next morning I had voicemails not just from Nathan but from Brenda as well, her message coldly professional but with an undercurrent of panic. Doug, this is Brenda. I think there's been a misunderstanding about the house payment. Please call us back immediately so we can resolve this situation. Instead of returning their calls, I went to see Patricia Gomez again, bringing copies of my bank statements showing the unauthorized withdrawal. She helped me draft a formal cease and desist letter regarding my finances, and we discussed next steps for protecting my assets. The good news, she said, is that the bank seems likely to reverse the fraudulent transaction. The bad news is that this puts your son's mortgage back in jeopardy. That's his problem to solve, I replied, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. I can't keep rescuing him from his own bad decisions. Patricia nodded approvingly. That's the right attitude, Mr. Reynolds. You can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, especially when they're the ones who lit the match. Living with Thomas provided more than just shelter. It gave me space to breathe and think clearly for the first time in months. His spare room became my sanctuary, a place where no one questioned my comings and goings or eyed my wallet when bills arrived. The relief of this simple respect was profound. Thomas introduced me to his weekly poker group, 5 other retirees, who met for low-stakes games and high-quality conversation. Unlike Nathan's destructive gambling, this was social entertainment, with strict limits, the kind of harmless pleasure that enriches life rather than destroying it. Doug's a construction man like me, Thomas told them on my first night. Built half the subdivisions in this county with his own 2 hands. The easy camaraderie reminded me of worksite lunches. Decades ago, men sharing sandwiches and stories under the shade of half-built homes. For the first time since Martha's death, I felt like I belonged somewhere again. July passed with multiple attempts from Nathan to contact me. His approaches cycled predictably angry accusations, followed by tearful apologies, then manipulative invocations of family duty, before starting the cycle again. I maintained the boundary I'd established, repeating that we could meet in person only after he sought help for his gambling. By mid-August, my bank had reversed the fraudulent mortgage payment, which precipitated another crisis call from Nathan. The bank is threatening foreclosure again, he said, his voice tight with stress. They're saying we have 30 days to bring the account current, or they'll start proceedings. What do you expect me to do about that? I asked. Help us, Dad. This is your grandchildren's home. And it's your responsibility, Nathan. You and Brenda have good jobs. Figure it out. We can't come up with $4,000 in a month, not with all our other debts. I sighed. Then maybe it's time to consider downsizing to something more within your means, or getting professional financial counseling. You're really going to let us lose our home? His voice cracked, whether from genuine emotion or calculated effect, I couldn't tell anymore. I'm going to let you face the consequences of your choices, I replied evenly. That's different. The call ended with his bitter accusation that I'd abandoned the family, a charge that still stung despite its unfairness. After hanging up, I found Thomas on the back porch tinkering with an old radio. "Nathan again?" he asked. I nodded, sinking into the adjacent lawn chair. "He thinks I should bail them out of the foreclosure situation." Thomas set down his screwdriver. "You know, my Sarah went through something similar a few years back. Got in over her head with credit cards after her divorce. Kept coming to me for bailouts." "What did you do?" "Hardest thing I've ever done." I said no. Told her I'd help her find financial counseling, even pay for it. But I wouldn't write checks to cover her debts anymore. He picked up the radio again, adjusting something inside. She was furious. Didn't speak to me for 3 months. And now, a smile creased his weathered face. Now she's debt-free, building her savings, and thanks me for having the backbone to stand firm. Sometimes love means not giving people what they want, but what they need. His words stayed with me as I continued rebuilding my life. Through a connection from Patricia Gomez, I found a senior support group that met weekly at the community center. There I met others who had experienced family estrangement, financial exploitation, or late life transitions. Their stories helped me understand I wasn't alone. Eleanor, a 74-year-old former librarian, had been pressured into co-signing loans for a granddaughter who subsequently defaulted, nearly bankrupting her. Victor, at 80, had moved in with his daughter after his wife's death, only to be gradually isolated from friends and community, while his savings mysteriously dwindled. "The hardest part," Eleanor said during one meeting, "is accepting that people you love are capable of hurting you this way. You raise them, teach them, right from wrong, and still." "It's not a reflection on you," Victor assured her. "My therapist says adult children make their own choices. We can't take responsibility for their moral failings." Through the group, I connected with an affordable housing program for seniors, and by early September had secured a small one-bedroom apartment in a modest but well-maintained complex. The rent would take a significant portion of my pension, but I'd been careful with my savings and could manage. Moving day was bittersweet. Thomas helped me transport my few belongings to the new place, which at 500 square feet was smaller than the basement at Nathan's, but entirely mine. I arranged my things carefully, furniture rescued from Nathan's garage that Thomas had stored for me, photos of Martha and our earlier family life, small treasures that had survived the recent upheaval. "It's not much," I apologized, as Thomas helped me position the small dining table. "It's yours," he replied simply. "No one can take it from you or tell you how to live in it. That makes it a mansion in my book." The day after I moved in, Nathan showed up unannounced, having gotten my address from a mutual acquaintance. I was returning from grocery shopping when I found him sitting on the steps outside my apartment, looking haggard and thin. "Can we talk?" he asked, standing as I approached. Part of me wanted to refuse to maintain the distance that had been protecting my heart and finances. But another part, the father who still remembered a gap-toothed boy running into my arms after work, couldn't turn him away. Briefly, I agreed, unlocking the door. "I have things to do today." Inside, he surveyed my small apartment with poorly concealed shock. "This is where you're living now." "This is my home," I corrected him. "What did you want to talk about, Nathan?" He sank onto my couch, running his hands through hair that had noticeably thinned since I'd last seen him up close. "The bank has officially started foreclosure proceedings. We have until November to find a solution or we lose the house." I set my groceries on the counter, taking my time to respond. "I'm sorry to hear that. Have you looked into loan modification options?" "They won't work with us because of our credit score." He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "I've been going to Gamblers Anonymous, twice a week for the past month." This surprised me. "That's good. I'm proud of you for taking that step." "It's hard, Dad. Harder than I ever imagined. Admitting what I've done, how I've hurt everyone." His voice broke. "Especially you." I sat in the armchair across from him, maintaining physical and emotional distance, despite the pull to comfort him. Addiction is powerful, but recognition is the first step toward healing. "I know I can't undo what I did. The things I said to you, how I treated you." He wiped at his eyes. I was so desperate, so scared of losing everything. But that's no excuse. No, I agreed. It's not. Brenda's left me, he said suddenly. Took the kids to her parents' house in Ohio. Says she won't come back unless I get my act together and save the house. I absorbed this information with mixed emotions. Concern for my grandchildren warred with the knowledge that Nathan was facing necessary consequences. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. I've been sober since you left, haven't placed a single bet. I'm working overtime, sold my car for a cheaper model. But it's not enough. The hole is too deep. He looked at me with naked hope. I'm not asking for a bailout, Dad. I know I don't deserve that. But maybe you could co-sign for a consolidation loan. Help me restructure the debt. The old Doug might have agreed instantly, eager to fix his son's problems, desperate to restore family harmony at any cost. But I wasn't that man anymore. No, Nathan, I said gently but firmly. I won't be co-signing anything. That's how we got here in the first place. His face fell. Then we'll lose everything. Maybe, I acknowledged. Or maybe this is the rock bottom you need to truly rebuild. Sometimes we have to lose what we have to find what we need. Nathan stayed another hour. We talked more honestly than we had in years about his addiction, about my enabling patterns, about possibilities for the future that didn't depend on maintaining appearances or possessions. When he left, there was no miraculous reconciliation, no promises that everything would be fixed, just a tentative first step toward a more honest relationship. That evening, I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset, feeling lighter despite the difficult conversation. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I was living according to my own values, not contorting myself to meet others' expectations or demands. It wasn't the retirement Martha and I had planned, but it was authentic and in its own way peaceful. 6 months passed, the seasons changing from summer's heat to autumn's glow, and then winter's quiet chill. My small apartment became truly home decorated, modestly but with items that held meaning. A quilt Martha had made graced the bed. Photos of happier family times stood on shelves, alongside new pictures of friends from my support group and Thomas's poker circle. I established routines that nourished body and soul. Morning walks in the nearby park, volunteer work at the community center, teaching basic carpentry to teenagers, Sunday dinners with Thomas, and occasionally other friends. My world, which had contracted painfully during those months in Nathan's basement, expanded again with new connections and purposes. The situation with Nathan evolved in ways I couldn't have predicted. The house did indeed go into foreclosure, but before the final proceedings, Nathan made a decision that surprised me. He sold most of their possessions, found a reasonably priced 2-bedroom apartment, and used the proceeds from the sale to negotiate a deed in lieu of foreclosure with the bank, allowing him to exit the mortgage without the full damage of foreclosure on his credit. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, he told me over coffee, at a diner midway between our homes, our new neutral meeting ground. Watching strangers carry away furniture, Brenda and I picked out together, seeing the kids' height marks on the wall painted over. But also, the most freeing. I understood completely. Sometimes the things we think define us are actually weighing us down. Nathan nodded. 6 months ago, I thought losing that house would kill me. Now I realize it was killing me trying to keep it. He continued attending Gamblers Anonymous, working his program with a commitment that gradually rebuilt my trust. Brenda eventually returned with the children, though their marriage remained strained as they navigated new financial realities and rebuilt trust. The crisis had exposed fundamental issues in their relationship that couldn't be papered over with material comforts anymore. My relationship with my grandchildren underwent its own healing. Initially hesitant and confused by the family upheaval, they gradually adjusted to visiting me in my apartment every other weekend. I converted the small dining nook into a craft area where Emma could pursue her artistic interests and help Tyler build a model rocket that we launched in the park near my complex. "I like your apartment, Grandpa," Emma said one Saturday as we painted watercolor landscapes together. "It's small, but it feels happy." "That's because I'm happy in it," I told her, touched by her perception. During these months, I also reclaimed pieces of myself that had been submerged during my time at Nathan's. I joined a community choir, something I'd always wanted to try, but had been too self-conscious for previously. I reconnected with old coworkers for monthly breakfast meetups. I even went on a few casual dates with Barbara, a widow from my building with a quick laugh and a passion for classic films. The financial aftermath took longer to resolve. Working with Patricia Gomez, I ensured my name was fully removed from any lingering obligations related to Nathan's former house. I updated my will and advanced directives, creating a clear but measured inheritance plan that would benefit my grandchildren's education without enabling any future financial irresponsibility. Nathan and I established new boundaries that acknowledged our history while protecting our recovering relationship. We didn't discuss his finances in detail, nor did I offer monetary assistance. Instead, I supported his recovery through consistent emotional presence and recognition of his progress. "You know what the hardest part of recovery is?" he asked during one of our diner meetups. "Accepting that I can't control everything, that sometimes life takes unexpected turns, and all you can do is adjust your sails. That's wisdom that usually comes with age," I remarked. "I'm proud of you for learning it sooner than I did." His expression turned serious. "I owe you an apology, Dad. A real one, not the manipulative garbage I tried before. What I did, how I treated you, it was unforgivable." "Not unforgivable," I corrected gently. "Just not automatically forgiven. Forgiveness is earned through changed behavior over time. And you're on that path." As spring returned, bringing cherry blossoms to the trees outside my apartment window, I reflected on the painful journey of the past year. The betrayal by my son had broken something fundamental in me, a naive trust that family bonds were somehow immune to the darker human impulses of greed and exploitation. Yet from that breakage had emerged a stronger, more authentic version of myself, a man who could set boundaries without guilt, who could love without surrendering his dignity, who could build meaningful connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. One evening, as Barbara and I returned from a community theater production, I found a small package outside my door. Inside was Martha's father's watch, the family heirloom Nathan had given to Tyler prematurely. "Tyler wanted you to have this back," read the accompanying note in my son's handwriting. "He says it's not his time for it yet. We both agree it should be your decision when and how family treasures are passed down." The gesture, small but significant, brought tears to my eyes, recognition from both generations that some wrongs could be acknowledged and some trust rebuilt, even if things would never be quite the same. That night I wrote in the journal I'd started keeping since joining the support group. "The greatest lesson I've learned is that love without respect is not really love at all. True love honors boundaries, celebrates independence, and wants the best for the other person, not just what they can provide." Martha used to say that family is everything, and she was right, but not in the way Nathan tried to exploit. Family should lift you up, not drain you dry. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away until healthy connection becomes possible again. The journey from that terrible night when my son demanded my pension to the peaceful life I'd rebuilt wasn't one I would have chosen. But standing firm in that moment of crisis, choosing self-respect over capitulation, had led me to unexpected joys and deeper relationships than I might otherwise have known. If you're facing a similar situation with family members who see you as a resource rather than a person, remember that walking away isn't abandonment. It's sometimes the only path to eventual healing. Family connections are precious, but they must be built on mutual respect to endure. I'd love to hear your stories of standing up for yourself or rebuilding after family betrayal. Leave a comment below, subscribe if you found value in my journey, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity and build a life that honors your worth. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the hardest choice leads to the most peaceful path.